Israeli weapons from all kinds started firing on the crowd. And it was just, it's something that I hope never happens again. But more importantly, our group, WFP, our people that work for us were there too, and they were put in grave danger as a result of that. No humanitarian aid worker should ever be a target of anything.
Well, CNN's Jeremy Diamond is standing by for us in Tel Aviv. And Jeremy, there we have a first-hand account from the World Food Programme about what happened in Sunday's deadly shooting, which takes the total death toll now at aid distribution points to over 1,000. In the face of this, how significant is it that today 25 nations, countries who are known to be Israel's allies, have moved to condemn the Israeli government?
Well, it's very significant, and it's significant for a number of reasons. First off, because it marks the latest instance of Israel's growing isolation on the world stage. I mean, these are not frequent critics of Israel, the countries that have come out here. More than 24 Western countries, led by France, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the language that they are using is quite stark, and it speaks to the undeniable nature of what we are seeing on the ground right now. As these countries say, the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached, quote, new depths. They call this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid delivery model spearheaded by Israel itself, quote, dangerous, and they say that it fuels instability and deprives Gazans of human dignity. They are squarely placing the blame of the humanitarian crisis that is now unfolding inside the Gaza Strip at Israel's feet. And indeed, it is Israeli restrictions on humanitarian aid, Israel's mode of delivery through this GHF Foundation, the restrictions on the amount of aid that the United Nations and the traditional humanitarian aid groups can bring in. It is all of that that is fueling what we are seeing inside of Gaza right now. Not only the fact that just this week we saw the 76th child in Gaza since the beginning of the war die due to malnutrition, but in addition to that, more than 1,000 people now, as you just noted, who have been killed by violence near these aid sites, largely by Israeli military fire directed at crowds of hungry Palestinians trying to make it to these aid sites. And at this point, the Israeli military isn't even denying that it's opening fire on these groups altogether. They call them, quote unquote, warning shots, but they acknowledge that people have been killed as a result of these warning shots. They do dispute the total death toll numbers. They say that it's not as high as what's being claimed on the ground. But the bottom line is that, whereas 8 weeks ago, when this violence first began near these Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid sites, the Israeli government, the Israeli military were all denying that it had happened. Now it's become an almost daily occurrence, one that the Israeli military isn't fully denying altogether, and it simply doesn't seem like there is anything that is going to get it to stop other than perhaps a ceasefire agreement, which would not only stop the shooting, stop the bombardment of Gaza, bring out dozens of hostages, but in addition to that, would also allow for an enormous surge of humanitarian aid, which, as we can see right now, is desperately, desperately needed.
Yeah. And in the face of this shooting, this starvation, we're reporting as well that Israel are preparing for a ground operation in Deir el-Balah, which was an area that has been largely spared from bombardment up to now because it's thought that the hostages were being held there. So why the move by Israeli military to do this now? And what does this spell for the thousands of Palestinians who had previously been viewing this as a sort of safe haven of sorts?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that many people in Deir el-Balah have actually seen Israeli tanks rolling into this area. And you're right to point out that one of the reasons we haven't seen a major ground offensive in that area is because of the fears that Israeli hostages could be held there and that advancing Israeli troops into this area could endanger their lives. It was less than a year ago, recall, that 6 Israeli hostages were executed by Hamas because Israeli troops were closing in on in that location. And so we're hearing today as well, in addition from Palestinians on the ground in Gaza, also from the families of Israeli hostages still held there, expressing their concern about this latest military operation and demanding that the government explain how this operation is not going to endanger their loved ones. I think the most likely explanation for this offensive is that it's yet another effort by the Israeli government to use military pressure to try and advance these hostage and ceasefire negotiations. And it comes, as I am told by sources familiar with the negotiations, that right now all parties are waiting on Hamas to respond to the latest ceasefire proposal on the table. It's been nearly a week now that they've had this latest proposal where you have several key Israeli objections that have been removed. Following a lot of pressure from the United States, Israel now agreeing to withdraw troops from that key corridor in the southern part of the Gaza Strip known as the Morag corridor. That was viewed as one of the major last remaining sticking points in these negotiations. I'm also told that privately, Khalil al-Hayya, the key Hamas negotiator, Hamas's leader outside the Gaza Strip, has said privately that he is inclined to accept this latest proposal, but they are waiting for a response from Hamas's leaders inside the Gaza Strip. Those are the leaders who would actually need to implement this agreement, and therefore they effectively have veto power over this. We will see whether or not they agree. Hamas spokesman Bassem Naim telling me that Hamas is conducting internal consultations right now over this latest proposal.
All right, Jeremy, this is important reporting. We appreciate you. Thank you.